to know. A little bit of context. I'm assuming that you're here because you're at least interested or in exploring the topic. And so we won't spend a lot of time defending to the death the notion of academics blogging, because there are lots of red flags and lots of concerns, and we may touch on some of that a bit, and have lots of resources at the end. But my goal really is to kind of take you into the world of blogging for academics, and show you some examples and maybe give you a little bit of a starting point. So that's kind of the context. So we're kind of assuming that you're a little bit of a willing audience. Does anyone blog? Anyone thought about blogging? What do you blog on?
Well, I've only done it a few times when I worked at a different teaching and learning center. Blogged on teaching and learning tips and ideas and things. So I would jump in every once in a while. It's kind of a group blog. We all.
Great example of the possibilities of people in academic settings collaborating to blog. Excellent. Did you raise your hand?
Oh,
Mike? Okay, great. Michael?
I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and one thing I will tell you, because I know at least one is interested, my promise to you, because I won't cover everything you want to know, is that if you're interested, I'm making myself available for some coaching. Distance delivered if people are not here on campus. So if you're interested and want to kind of talk about what you could do and how to do it, I will make myself available. So that's my little gift to you for sitting through this for the next 70 minutes. So a little bit of context about a blog. You probably all read blogs, whether or not you know it, but basically a blog is an online website, chronologically updated. It can be news, it can be personal insights, it can be a range of things, but it's kind of an online weblog or journal where someone is updating it regularly. So there's something that is posted on some regular schedule, and the regular schedule is kind of important for blogging. And it can be a range of topics. It can be news, it can be plain text, it can be multimedia, it can be a range of things. But it's some kind of a regularly updated, formatted kind of environment. Early on, they were literally kind of the common theme was online journals. You know, people would log on, usually behind a password protection, and blog about their lives. Some took that public and did that online thinking out loud. And it kind of grew from there. But that's kind of the context. And it can be everything from my little personal blogs and my dog's blog to Huffington Post, and just kind of a wide range of environments and sources in terms of what blogs can do and do. So a little bit about the context for me speaking to you about this is that I do blog. This is my primary site. And as Janelle mentioned, this was a part of a class that I did for Christy. So if you're instructors and you're thinking about what are some cool ways I can involve students, engage them in thinking in different ways, which is a different topic that I've talked about. We won't cover that. But blogging is one great opportunity to engage students in a different kind of knowledge production and learning. I did set this up for that class, and the goal was, first off, to impact practice. I had grand plans. I had done some survey research in another class on the learning needs of Laramie's boards, which is hence the name of the blog. My one regret, because that didn't pan out, but the original goal was to share research and to talk about what I was learning about what our nonprofit boards needed in terms of learning needs. That extended to my dissertation research, which was based on a case study I did of a local board. And so I had that kind of strong practical sharing with people who would use it kind of motivation. A piece I didn't necessarily know the blog would give me is branding. Christy's description is a little bit of an overstatement, but the bottom line is I do have kind of a global presence and a global network, and the blog provided kind of a focal point for that. So that's kind of been an intentional piece, but something that can happen with a blog, and it has happened for me. So in terms of what's possible and what are faculty and graduate students and researchers doing in the area of blogging, believe it or not, there actually is a growing bit of research on this topic, and I will give you resources for that. Um, if you look at the examples and you look at the research that's been going on, there tend to be a couple of themes in terms of how faculty are using blogs in their professional lives. And one being, probably not a huge surprise, their research agenda. Blogs can be a way to share their research with others. And then there's this one over here of kind of teaching and outreach. We'll be seeing some examples, and you'll be exploring some examples in a few minutes. But those are kind of, if you look at the work that's being done, the research being done on what are people actually doing, they tend to cluster around those two themes. So, in terms of the research agenda, blogs can be a great place to extend your scholarly work to audiences that may not have access to the journal articles that you're writing and the scholarly networks that you're engaged in. People who actually might be interested in aspects of your work and maybe even applying your work in different ways. I go to the governance nonprofit research conference every year, and there's so much great information out there, so much great work being done, but it's not reaching out to the people who could use it. Blogs can be a really great way to extend your knowledge to actually impact practice. A blog can be a great way to engage your peers. There are some good examples of bloggers and researchers kind of collaborating, using a blog as a format to collaborate and talk about their common research, and sharing kind of works in progress, and then inviting peer feedback to get them to help you think differently and look for some holes and collaborate in new ways. You can do that either via a kind of a public setting where you give them, they can access your public insights and provide feedback. You also can do that between a password-protected blog where you invite your peers to come and collaborate and interact kind of in more of a private setting. So there's lots of great potential there. And I'll show you at least one example of a consortium doing a little bit of that. It's a place for thinking out loud. It's been interesting to me to see how graduate students, particularly doctoral students, are using blogs to kind of process the doctoral experience as well as process their research in both private and public settings. Obviously, I can't see the private ones, but there's some doctoral students doing some really interesting things in terms of documenting their work and documenting the experience and inviting others to read and understand and comment. As I was setting up this blog and in the midst of my own doctoral research, I encountered a blog by a woman who was working on her doctorate in knowledge management, in mathematics. And I wish it still existed. It seems to have disappeared, but she basically blogged her entire dissertation. The entire dissertation in some format. Now, there might have been more of an expanded version that she submitted, via the traditional venues, but essentially you had her entire dissertation online on her blog, which was really just a very fascinating kind of approach. And frankly, I kind of wished I'd known about that, because I have little notebooks filled with my just observations and things I might want to remember and things that didn't apply anymore, and and it might have been a nice thing to have a blog to be able to do that. So it can be a place, and that's one of the scary things, particularly if you leave it public, that you're opening up your work and your thought processes to others, and that I will admit is one of those kinds of questions you have to to think about as you're considering whether to set up a blog and how you want to do that. But there is a place for private reflection. As I mentioned, I think any of the common platforms like Blogger or WordPress will allow you to set up a private or password-protected site. So if you want to do that work online and you don't want it accessible to other people or a select group of people, you can set that up. But again, it's another kind of venue that would always be available, whether or not you have your notebooks or your to do that work. And blogs can be a great way for researchers and faculty, writers, to set up an online portal sharing their work with new audiences. And you'll see a couple different examples of that, where, yes, the blog is part of what I'm sharing with you, but you can also find, not me personally, but you can also find access to my scholarly journals and interviews maybe I've done as a faculty member, and books I've written that you can buy. They can be a blog can be a great way to kind of collect all that into an online portal. Before we move on to the teaching piece, thoughts, reactions. Lisa.
One of the things that I observed was the daringness of people 15 plus years ago in terms of what they were putting out there. I mean, it appeared to me that it was some cutting edge thinking about what would be you'd want to share publicly. And I've wondered, as the tools have gotten a little more sophisticated about trying to allow there to be some privacy settings, what your responses, what your thoughts are in terms of whether that really has changed, rather, because certainly year to year it seems to me that there have been differences. What is available. But there's a very rich amount of information that you can go and extract if you're one of the non-daring people. But also, it seems to me that there's probably a whole lot more that you can do and interact. I mean, when you started 15 years ago, there wasn't a big community. Right. So you kind of really got to meet people.
I think there are different comfort levels, but that has gotten better as people see that terrible things don't happen when people put themselves out there. There are different groups, different scholarly groups that actually invite the political scientists. There's a great article that I will have in the resources that I provide, where they're encouraging their peers who blog to be controversial, because that's what they want. They want that conversation, and they want that kind of engagement. I think that just kind of over time, as people get onto different types of social media and other online environments, again, you kind of become more at ease with putting your thoughts out there. And so I do think that you're seeing people, what you're seeing is exactly right. People are braver. And they're seeing that, people can be civil. They can see that you can deal with the occasional troll in ways that aren't awful. They see others having successes by putting themselves out there and wanting to be part of that, whether it's on a blog or on Twitter, or seeing that their peers are, there's a little bit of peer invitation or pressure to get in there and give it a try when you see that your peers are having these great conversations with people they wouldn't otherwise have access to, because they're stepping out and reaching out and trying to engage people in a new way. So I would say it's kind of a combination of things. The tools are more available, the tools are more user-friendly, people are less afraid of them, they're interacting in similar kinds of ways in different environments. So but this notion probably isn't as scary as it was a few years ago. Does that make sense? Yes?
Is some of what you're just saying, is that the reason why this summer I anticipated wanting to do something like this? I looked at many different sites, education, higher ed, surrounding issues of at-risk students and reading blogs and this and that. And I was thinking that as I teach, when you make a claim, you back it up with support evidence, this and that, and so on. But I saw examples of, well, I guess I would say maybe poor scholarship.
Sure.
Where'd you get those numbers? I mean, how can you say this
Sure.
without citations and this and that? And is it just kind of, is it more conversational than what I was expecting it to be?
Well, the writing is necessarily very different if you're writing for a mass audience. So, a couple of things that strike me. One would be there are ways for someone to share that information that doesn't look like footnotes from a for me, if it's possible, I hot link. One of the great things about blogs is they're interactive, and I can hot link to the direct sources that I use. So there is an element of critical thinking that is required, which from a teaching standpoint, let's go ahead and move to that one. From a teaching standpoint, that's one of the things you can use blogs for, is engage your students in conversations about what's good scholarship, what isn't, what are the questions that this particular blog post, if we're looking at a source that's a blog post, what are some of the questions that we have about, what are the things that are left unsaid, which of course you can't cover what you would cover in a scholarly journal article in a blog post. The great thing is you and your students can comment on that blog post and ask. And so you have direct, and hopefully that person will have a great answer and they'll have some resources to share. But it also can be a great learning opportunity, as long as we're talking about learning opportunities, to engage your students in some critical thinking, Of course, your goal is to provide the highest quality resources possible, but there's always an opportunity, particularly in a situation like this where they can't say everything you probably want to know about the research in a single blog post. There are ways then to use that as a learning opportunity. Parenthetically, I love using blogs in classes because there are just so many great ways, and having a class blog. But that's again, another topic for another time. So in terms of teaching and outreach, there's another kind of stream of research showing that scholars are using blogs as teaching and outreach opportunities. The most obvious one would be using a blog to engage new groups of people, sharing information with new groups of people who would use it in new ways. In my case, my blog is written for nonprofit board members, board leaders, and by extension their executive directors. That's who, there are a lot of consultants out there too who read my blog, but that's kind of my goal in reaching out and providing different kinds of translations of material that I think would be of use to them in some way. Anyone have an example of, I'll be asking this more formally in a minute, but a quick example of something you have that you just love to share with a new audience? Something within your own research? We might save that for the little exercise we have you do in a minute. But be thinking about, there are new groups of people who would benefit from learning what you know, but don't have access to your scholarly journals or your paper presentations. It can be, as I mentioned, a great student engagement platform in a variety of ways, having a class blog, having a blog where the blog is the kind of the focal point of the class. The class that I took with Christy that led to my own blog, we kind of set e-college aside, and we had a blog, and that was her kind of her primary tool for communicating with us and interacting with us. So it's a different kind of way of sharing information. For example, if you're flipping a class, you can put your video up on a blog, so it's there and accessible to them. You can invite comments and feedback via the comments portion of the blog. Great ways to engage students in different, more interactive ways. Particularly if the LMS you're using is a little bit tedious or students are having some trouble, it can be a good way to kind of take them out into a safe environment and interact in a different way. A blog can be used for learning objectives and resources. This isn't my primary focus, but a lot of times in my classes or in consulting or training sessions where I'm working with the nonprofit board, they'll have a question or I'll have some homework I want them to do. The best, most concise kind of summary of what I want to say or have them be thinking about is already written in a blog post. So I can refer them, and sometimes it's on purpose where it's part of the reading or it's part of the homework I give a board before I come in and work with them. Sometimes in a discussion, we're talking about something else and a topic comes up and it's kind of sort of related, but someone wants more information, but I don't want to get them off track. I can give them a link to a blog post or a video I posted in there and share that information in a way that's not me trying to come up with something on the fly. You know, where it's all kind of always already kind of written in a quality manner that provides the information that I think is useful. Learning object, I'm actually working on putting together an ebook on some of my blog posts. So that's actually consciously me creating something, a learning object that will be available to readers of the blog and people who want to go out and purchase that. The blog, from a teaching and outreach standpoint, can also be a great public profile place. There's kind of a little bit of a thread in some of the research, newer research, talking about how this can be a great thing for junior faculty. You know, because they don't have a lot of street cred yet, they haven't done as many presentations, and you know, they're still working on their journal articles. And so having a blog can be a different kind of way of getting their name out to a whole range of audiences. And yes, I will acknowledge that there are many cautions about we don't want distracted junior faculty off on focusing on things that won't get them tenure. But within the context of this may be a small investment of time, it can be a way to kind of help that junior faculty member or any faculty member, graduate student, build a little bit of a public profile that helps them reach out and build a little bit of a reputation beyond campus, beyond their individual professional organization, again, kind of building a broader audience. Reactions to that, any of these? Michael.
What are the channels and are those changing that people find their way to blogs? Are these searches? Are these referrals? How do you know what's out there, and how do you get to what you want in the real world?
Different ways of finding blogs. One would be social media. You can share links and updates on Facebook. You can share a lot. Twitter is used a lot. In different learning communities, where there's a network of people you've already connected to them because you have like interests, and formally or informally, you can share your links and recommendations for other blogs that you recommend to people via tools like Twitter. Twitter is huge for me, because you're already connecting with like-minded people. LinkedIn is great. Funny thing about LinkedIn, I go there every week when I post a blog post, and I put that on my profile, and the 400 plus people I'm connected to there see that. But Twitter LinkedIn just allowed people to start publishing on LinkedIn. So you can write a blog post on LinkedIn. I did that for the first time Monday, and by yesterday afternoon, I had 885 views of that blog post. That has happened once, and maybe within an extra couple days with one blog post I've written on the site. I have no idea how those people found me. I have 8 new followers based upon that blog post. It's powerful stuff, and I need to spend more time on LinkedIn, obviously. But there are different kinds of ways that people can find recommendations from friends and other readers. If you go to kind of the aggregating sources like Huffington Post, they will often have a post that's a version of that post there, but then they will also send you, they will also include a link to that person's blog. So you can look for sources there. You'll find them a lot in, if you in Google. There's part of the aggregator within Google that if you have an active Google blog and you Google a term like learning disabilities, and you have an active learning disability blog, that's going to appear fairly high in their search results. So lots of different ways you can find it. Now, in terms of RSS feeds, people in here have RSS feeds, I hope?
Well, I have.
Okay. RSS is your friend. RSS is a way to ensure that you don't have to go out and look for all those blogs and all those news sites. That an RSS feed will bring new posts to you. If we have time, I'll show you that. But that's the way to kind of keep up with blog posts for sites you want to visit. So I was serious about thinking about this. So take a couple minutes and think about a couple questions. One, what is work that you're doing that you're interested in professionally, scholarly, personally, that you have to share with others? And then what is at least one new audience that you might be able to share that with? So think for just a couple minutes, and then we'll just do a quick check-in, and because you all have something. You all have something to share. Anyone want to offer? I won't force you to, but anyone like to offer an example? Sure, Mike.
Ours are, I could see using it for like tips and tricks. One struggle we have at Casper College is that instructors are unsure how to share copyrighted material.
Oh.
And so how we decided how to do that is you can actually upload to Google Drive and then embed that video into Moodle or email. That way it's only shared with your students. But just getting that information out to faculty would be a great way to do that.
Absolutely. The great thing about that is if you do it in a public blog setting, not only are you sharing your expertise and your wisdom with Casper College faculty, you're also sharing with anyone who has an internet connection. That's a great example. Great example. Anyone else care to share? Yes.
This is my quandary. On the one hand, I want to offer help to students coming into post-secondary who are underprepared. That's what I've been doing all these years. On the other hand, I also would like to be part of the national conversation about this issue and throw in my 2 cents. But there's two different audiences.
Sure.
And how to get that all on one blog, or that's pages, I don't know, that's been a quandary for me. Because also the students I would like to reach are the ones least likely that would access a blog.
Okay.
As with the other side of what I want to do.
That's one of the questions that's part of the decision process is, does this format make sense for your audience? And in that case, you may find that the blog probably might not really be the best avenue to reach that particular audience.
Yes.
Could be.
Right.
They may surprise you, but could be. So that may, as you think about that, that may be one of the deciding factors, that maybe that other audience, and maybe your audience, is other people who do the same work that you do or do research in that area, and equipping them to better support the people you ultimately want to reach. So part of that being part of the conversation and inspiring people to think and sharing your wisdom about that and sharing your experiences, it may be that your blog can foster that conversation with those who want to have a conversation, but also provide resources, because I would imagine there are people who aren't maybe necessarily actively researching, but they're involved in that work, and they really could use a great resource for understanding and identifying new and effective ways to work with students.
Well, there are lots of open source for
Okay.
lots of
Okay.
material. And that's something else, but I think a blog to discuss what I want to discuss would be okay. But then if I myself wanted to create materials, because I think I have to do that, the whole copyright thing, I have to share with students. I'm not sure about that side to reach those students. I don't think the blog for doing one thing is the same.
Sometimes you can serve dual purposes, and it may take a little bit of thinking about whether you can appropriately do justice to both audiences. It may not be impossible, but it may be a little bit more of a challenge for you.
I was
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah. Yeah. Pages. Most of the full-service platforms will allow you to create not just the blog, and we'll see examples of this, but pages where you can store resources. In my blog, I do have a handful of pages that are primarily focused on sharing specific resources on specific topics. So, for example, if you're interested in board learning or board organizational dynamics, you don't have to go wading through the blog. It's kind of right there. So yeah, you could possibly create a page for resources for students. Or yes, absolutely. And I would say also one of the great things about having a blog, and one of the greatest services you can have for some of those lay audiences, you can be a curator. You can share and interpret great research and yeah, absolutely. And sharing, one of the things I've tried to do in the past is translating some of the great governance research that's out there and putting it into plain English, so that it's not my research, although they see my research, but it's kind of helping to summarize and kind of provide a user-friendly interpretation of others' research. So there are lots of possibilities that might be very, very appropriate. Anyone else want to share some thoughts about before we move on? Michael.
Well, I was thinking that you might use it to promote lateral thinking discussions. So, for example, Piketty's new book, Capital, is mostly about taxation and public spending, but perhaps it could be used as a focus to talk about higher education funding or equity of access to higher education. Just something that's not in the mainstream discussion, but perhaps would be profitable.
Absolutely. And that would be a service. It would be a service to those who want to dig deeper and want to think more expansively and invite some conversation. There would be a service of just helping them to think about in a different way, the content in a different way, but it also can be a valuable way to invite them into a conversation with you. Yeah, absolutely.
What all of this has triggered for me is the idea that for those service organizations that we belong to, professional organizations, some of them really don't send out very much information to members. And I guess what I would love to get, therefore maybe I would make an appropriate response to this, is links to those wonderful, really cutting-edge thoughts within your individual area of expertise.
You bet. In addition to writing your own content, one of the great values, great services you can provide to a range of audiences is sharing those resources that they might not find otherwise. Absolutely. I got a little out of the mode recently, but I've in the past, and I need to do this again, have a Friday post kind of sharing, it's called Overheard, and sharing kind of really thought-provoking resources that I find while I'm surfing around, and then providing the link to the source, and then providing just a little bit about why I think this would be of interest to them. So that's of great value to anyone who's reading your blog. But yeah, that's a great idea.
Because nobody has enough time.
Yeah.
So
If someone is willing to help curate, curation is a very legitimate purpose that we can provide, particularly those of us who are experts in our areas, helping people weed through the junk and find those high-quality resources. So if that's a perfectly valid purpose for a blog or one activity within your blog. So I did mention that we're going to get interactive here. I have lots of great examples that I'm going to invite you to go in and dig through. So first thing I want you to do is go to my Pinterest board that I created for this particular workshop called Academic Blog Examples. Go to pinterest.com/npmaven. That's my profile on Pinterest. Go down. It should be the very last board on my profile called Academic Blog Examples. I want to introduce you to a handful of noteworthy examples just to give you a sense of the variety, and then I'm going to invite you to go in there and kind of poke around. you'll see within there, each pin is a link to a different academic blog. So when you get to that site, after I show you these little examples I'm going to offer up, I want you to go in there and just kind of poke around, kind of dig, pick a few examples, and make note of what you see, what people are doing on those blogs, what you like, what kind of scares you, what kind of intrigues you. So as you're looking that up, again, pinterest.com/NP, as in nonprofit Maven. And by the way, pretty much anywhere you go, that's who I am. That's part of my branding. So that's just a quick way to get you to where you need to be. So everybody got that? Okay, I want to show you some quick examples, and then we'll spend a little bit of time having you kind of poke around within those examples to see what people are doing. The first one I want to show you is one, she's, I think Canadian, but she is a scientist. I believe food science is her expertise area. And this one is noteworthy because her purpose in this blog is to translate science into public-friendly, accessible tools. So she is looking at the person who doesn't really probably have a lot of background in science, and she wants to make that knowledge accessible to the general public. So, and she blogs, apparently, well, you're not seeing it on the screen here, but at the top of the site, when you go to that site, you'll see she focuses on gender and science, maybe environmental science. There are different kinds of areas. But her focus with this one is to make science friendly for the average user. So the next one I wanted to show you was, I mentioned faculty portals. This is a physicist, and this guy kind of does it all. You can, this is a blog. This is probably WordPress. You can see over here, this is the stream of his blog. But up here, you can see you have information. He's, again, creating pages and creating kind of one-stop shopping for everything you want to know about him and his work. So you'll see an about page, a page that's the blog itself, a news archive. I believe that's news articles about him or featuring him. Some science-specific communications, his academic works, his calendar, because I believe he's a speaker, and so if you want to kind of find out where he is, you can go there to his calendar, some contact information, and a link to his home institution. You can buy his books in a variety of formats. I mean, it really is kind of, this is the authoritative place to go for this guy if you want to learn about him and his work. Now, what you can't see on the screen, but you'll see if you go to his blog when we're searching, is he's also connected. Up at the top, you'll see he's on Twitter. He has an RSS feed for you. He's on YouTube, Google+, Flickr. He makes it easy for you to find his resources. If when you get into the Twitter board, you'll be able to look at that specifically. You can't see it up here, but he is everywhere, and so he's making it as easy for you as possible to get to his Flickr pictures and his YouTube channel and everything. It's all right there. Kind of a slick presentation, don't you think? Here's another example of, he's a sociologist, and he's written a book, and he works on kind of digital humanities. So this is one I found early on I thought was a really great example. Again, he has a blog, but he also has a portal for his research, the projects he's working on, publications he's written, things he does as a consultant. There's a contact page. And then if you want kind of more detail, you can look at like social media for academics, and he makes it really easy for you to dig as little as possible to find the information you're interested in. So it's really a great place for, this is the place you go if if you're interested in Mark Kerrigan's work, because it's all right here. This is a blog. I believe that's also WordPress. But he's taken the extra step of creating pages that makes more of a home for his scholarly work. Again, all of these are on the board that I took you to. This is an example of a PhD student and blogging about the doctoral process, the research process, and her experience as a PhD student. There is another one in there by Emma Burnett, which is a little more focused on her work. An example of how a doctoral student is using a blog to support her scholarly life. This one is, I put this up because Go Canada, Canada actually has online awards for their best online efforts, and this one won the Best Blog Award in 2010. Go Canada. And again, he is blogging on social media, society, and technology. And the last example I'll show you, this is a really interesting one. This is a consortium, again from Canada, of several universities in that country who have come together. They wanted to find a way to have their research matter. And one of the solutions they came up with is developing this blog where they collaborate to bring their cutting-edge research that they want to bring to a broader audience and bring that into user-friendly kinds of posts. So we're collaborating to make sure that their research doesn't just go the paper route or doesn't just end up in journals, that it's reaching people who can take it and run with it and make a difference with it. So let's take 5 minutes or so, dig into that Pinterest board and see what you see. Kind of poke around, see what looks interesting, get a sense of kind of what the tone and what they're writing about. And then we'll come back together and talk about some good examples, things that are exciting you or things that, look a little interesting. Let's see. I want to give you some time to look and see what others are actually doing in this area. Yes? Oh, excuse me. Okay, let me just put this in. Oh, you're good. You're good. There we go. Oops. Yes. Oh, extra E. Oh, come on. Okay. There you go. It should be. Well, I'm a Mac girl. Click. Yeah. Yeah. I tried to get a good mix of different kinds of disciplines, so hopefully there'll be something that strikes your fancy. Now, I will say the disclaimer is I can't guarantee, attest to the quality of every single post. I just picked blogs that looked interesting. And by the way, that main profile page gets you to a board on public scholarship, which is kind of the bigger picture view of this, on blogging in the classroom. Lots of good stuff there that I pinned for you. and a few things about dogs and birds and things. So. Yeah, yes, yes. There's an element of just doing it. And, I mean, you want to be accurate, and you want to sound like, you want to put on a good face. But there's something to be said for just sharing your thoughts. And, yeah, that...
What I thought I would do, because I've got an old LinkedIn account I haven't looked at in 20,000 years, but that would be where I would, okay, oops, here I am, and my Facebook account, which is mostly my family.
Well, the great thing about having a blog is you can share in all those settings. So whatever you write within your blog, you can share in any of those environments.
But I mean, that's how
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's some thought work, and if we kind of, like I said, I'm available for coaching. We can talk about, what do you really want to do? And, yeah. Because any approach you want to take will be appropriate, and there is an element of you just have to write that first post, and when the world doesn't collapse, and you may get a good comment or two, then it's easier to write the second one. Are you seeing anything interesting? Hopefully you are. Yeah, it's a different mindset, a different way of writing. I mean, you still want to, but it's different. It's different. Yes. Yeah. Yes, it has to be conversational. Whoever you're writing for, that's yeah. Even if you're writing for even see if your primary audiences are peers, it's a different conversational way of sharing and sparking insight and inviting them in to discuss. Sure. Well, and the more conversational tone may help you reach a broader audience beyond your intended people who use it. Yeah. I'm wary of time, so I think we will. Again, this is out there forever, so if you want to go back and look at these in more greater depth, any of these kind of leap out at you as particularly interesting? Did you see anything that sparks an idea about that you might like to try, or? Should I poke through a couple of these? Anyone you want me to pull up here and look at? And they're doing some interesting things to reach different kinds of audiences. This is another one by a doctoral student. I'll click through that one. I've been involved in Twitter chats with doctoral students. It's all European. She's one I've been in contact with. She's basically, you can see some of the recent posts, how I'm tackling my discussion chapter, dealing with the unexpected interruptions. I think she's a mom. How do you kind of keep yourself mentally and physically alert while you're writing, her strategy. And whether or not anyone else actually reads this, although I know there are peers within this PhD chat who follow her and are friends with her, Whether or not others take this and use this to kind of help themselves go through that same process, I am certain that this has been a valuable process for her, a way to kind of think and reflect and process the process. Now here's one, her last one, she has 8 comments. So she not only shared and discussed, whatever she thought was useful for herself and for others, she's inspiring and interacting. Emma Burnett is the author here. She's inspiring feedback, and she is engaging the people who are leaving feedback in conversation about whatever it was that struck their fancy as they were reading it. So great way for her to not only process her own experience, but to engage others in learning about what she's doing, and perhaps, I haven't read those comments, but perhaps thinking about how that might be applied to them. I mentioned the misadventures of Dr. Beach. That's the other doctoral student. Again, we couldn't see. That wasn't the one I wanted to show you. Multitasking. And I wanted to show you. Oh, here is. I don't know if I'll be able to. Hopefully you saw this, where this is the physicist portal, and hopefully if you had a chance to click on that, it's easier to see here. So he's on YouTube, he's on StumbleUpon, Flickr, Dig. He has delicious bookmarks, social bookmarks, so resources he's collecting. He is everywhere. If you want to connect and learn more about his work, he has made it as easy as possible for you to do that. There's some great examples of. He's kind of like the ultra connected, ultra sophisticated, but you'll see lots of examples of different faculty using different ways of making their broader set of resources available via the pages. Any others that you want me to pull up that you saw that looked interesting?
What do people who are sharing unpublished work, what are their concerns as far as copyright, people taking their ideas, or
Yeah, and if you look at the research on why people blog or don't blog, those are very real concerns. And it does require a different kind of thinking about how can I not share everything I know and am learning, but how can I share maybe highlights or pick out questions, so it wouldn't be you're sharing everything that that you might put in a chapter or an article, but maybe some kind of some highlights, so that you're giving them what would be useful and what might be interesting to spark discussion, but not giving them everything. That is very real, and that is a real concern that I've also encountered, and that's the inherent danger of this platform. I am regularly being asked by people to, if they can include my articles, my blog posts in, for example, volunteer handbooks. And I try to, talk about, yes, I'll give you copyright permission to do that, and, can kind of give them some frameworks. But bottom line is they can do whatever they want because it's out there. So that's a very real kind of concern that you have to think about in terms of what you share with your regarding your intellectual property and what you don't. Then that is a very real concern in the academic community. And it's, and I struggle with that a little bit, in terms of kind of some original stuff I've done. There's only so much you can do, because the reality is once it's out there and it's public, anyone can take it and use it without you even knowing about it. Who knows where some of my posts have gone without me even knowing that they've done it. Yeah, but that's a very real kind of question you have to ask if you're going to do this and you're going to be sharing research. Don't share everything, but what can you share that would be useful for them and for you, particularly if it's kind of a work in progress and you're trying to, you need some help batting it about. How much do you share to get them going and give you feedback without giving them everything? Yeah, that is a real concern. Yes, Michael.
Following up on that, I understand what you're saying from a very practical copyright law and a blog post a gray area?
Well, you do have the inherent copyright, and I'm not totally up on the exact laws, but it's your property. But it's in theory. Yeah, in theory, yeah, it's your property, and you control it. But in theory, anyone can do anything they want with it. And you know, sometimes I will find my work via the statistics on the blog and find that it's appeared in some interesting places. Usually, it's a link that someone has provided, but you know, so you might encounter it without you know, almost by accident. But yeah, in theory, it's your intellectual property, and you could probably, you know, yeah, it's the same thing with anything else you put online. Yes, it's your property, and yes, you hold copyright to it, but will you find out? You know, but that is a very real concern, and that's part of the kind of necessary questions you need to ask yourself in terms of what kinds of risks you're willing to take and what kind of writing you're willing to do and how you want to engage these audiences. And that it does take some kind of thinking. One of the things I did with my dissertation, I wrote blog posts, a series of blog posts that kind of summarized the highlights. So they got the essentials without all the detail. And then I created a white paper by pulling those blog posts together and creating kind of a one-stop thing where they got a good practitioner, but that fit my purpose. I wanted it to get into the hands of boards who would use it. So that was one of the things I did was I offered summaries that didn't give a lot of detail but gave them the essentials, and then I created the white paper. So I'm cognizant of time. So in terms of I do have resources, as you can see. In terms of what it takes to blog, here we go. All right. In terms of what it takes to blog, bottom line, you need a perspective. You need a sense of who your audience is and what you want to engage them around. Excuse me. There we go. I'm about to take a tumble, so I'm going to sit down for a second. In terms of what a blogger needs, you need a target audience. So you need that kind of, who am I writing it to? As you're writing a post, write for that person. You need a good bit of time. It doesn't have to be terribly time-consuming, but there is a time commitment. You need to commit to doing this, and you need to update it regularly. What regularly means to you will vary, but you need to commit to doing it because people will stop coming if you don't write. You need a perspective. You need a voice and a perspective on what you are wanting to say and what you want to share. For me, it's I'm advocating for a richer way of governing and challenging boards to think differently about how they work and providing them the support they need to do that. You need an ability to talk in just plain English. You need to set aside the journal speak, and you need to be able to translate what you want to share in formats that will be accessible to your audience. You need a willingness to promote. So wherever your audiences will be, that's where you need to be able to be there and to help promote so they know what you're writing and they know where to find you. And you need to be willing to engage your audiences. When they comment on your post, you need to comment back, respond to them. You need to acknowledge them. You need to engage them wherever they're engaging with you. So, creating a blog, I'm feeling a little bit loop-de-loop here. Let me go to, I'm going to show you an example of how to set up a blog in Google. just because many of you probably already have a Google account, but it's very similar in WordPress or any of the others. So I'm going to show in Google. Once you're in Google, you go to the apps portion. You scroll down. Blogger is under more. Let's see, Blogger. And you will get something resembling this. Since you don't have a blog yet, probably, you'll want to create a new blog. And what I will tell you is, this part I know is going too quickly to be useful. So this is where, if you want to learn how to use WordPress or use Blogger and you want to set up a blog, I will be available for coaching. Yeah. So it's literally as simple as coming up with a name, coming up with an address. So whatever you want your blog to be titled, you will create an address of this.blogspot.com. It's just filling in the details. And then you will pick a theme. I don't know, it will let me. And it's telling me the address is available. So now that I can do that, I can just pick a theme. There are lots of different themes. And it's a matter of creating your blog. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. Now, once you have it, then of course you have to do something with it. And that's where you can look into. That's where you create your entries and create pages and things. This one obviously has nothing there. So I'll pull up my my main blog. WordPress is the same way. My adult ed blog is on WordPress. They make it very, very simple. You just go to post, or create a new post, and you will get a dialog box that looks just like that. It's just like a regular WYSIWYG dialog box. It is literally that easy to create a blog post. I will tell you that Blogger is a great basic format, and the only thing I found I can't really do in Blogger that I could in WordPress, it handles embedded videos fine, it handles photos fine. It doesn't handle audio very well. It's incredibly tedious, and it's not really set up for audio. So that's really my only regret. And one of the reasons, well, a big reason I'm still on Blogger is I have a domain name that I purchased through Google, and it's through a third party, but it's pretty tedious to change that to different settings. So I'm looking at different ways to handle the audio, and probably I'll set up a WordPress blog to handle the audio that will become a podcast. My ultimate goal is to create a podcast. So it is literally that simple to set up a blog, and it's a very similar process if you go to WordPress or Tumblr or any of the formats. So I do want to share. I did mention I have some resources, and here we go. Hopefully this will let me stay here. Ah, there we go. Okay, you have. This is a set of my bookmarks, my social bookmarks on Diigo, that has everything I've tagged blogging and academia. So this will give you some examples of blogs. It will give you access to scholarly articles. The one thing that I couldn't pin on Pinterest because there's nothing visual on a scholarly journal article. So you will see a range of news articles, scholarly journal articles, just kind of a full, I think there are 110 resources there that are all related to blogging in academia. So that's where you get the good stuff. I created a QR code because the URL for that is incredibly tedious. So if you want me to leave that up there or draw that back up, you can just click that on QR code and get that link to that site. I mentioned in Pinterest, and again, if you go to my main profile, This is a broader set of bookmarks that I've been collecting all along. I separated out the examples so you wouldn't have to go slog through all of these because I have 120 pins. There again, it's a narrower set of resources that were pinnable that talk about some of the challenges, some of the examples of people using a range of social media. How do you put yourself out as a public scholar? So it's blogging and more, blogging and Twitter, and again, if you just go to pinterest.com/npmaven, you'll be able to access all of my boards. Also in Pinterest, you will find, as I said, I have a board on blogging, so that will be kind of basics of blogging. I will also have, if you're interested in using blogs in the classroom, I have blogging, one that's called Blogging in Education. I did a workshop on that a year or so ago. So there are lots of great resources there if you're interested in this particular topic. I mentioned, and I'll go back to the QR code if you want to capture that. I mentioned that I am totally open to doing some coaching. If you all are interested, we could do it individually, or we could do it as maybe as a small group if there are 2 or 3 or 4 of you. The outreach school has said that's cool. So if you're in Casper or somewhere else, Christy will help us link up using technology. So if you want to kind of get together and just bat some ideas around, I can talk the technology. I can also talk about, if you want, just to kind of have a chance to talk amongst some peers about what could I do with the blog. Totally open to that. So please contact me. Maybe email is the way to do it, so that I have a paper trail of collecting who all would be interested. Any parting shots? You have about 30 seconds. Any parting shots or questions? I know I've kind of opened the fire hose and a world you've never, maybe hadn't thought about in this the same way before, but I'm happy to support you or answer any questions that you have, and glad to encourage you to blog. Like I said, any last questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.